She only came to watch until the SEAL commander spotted her tattoo and went silent. The morning air carried the scent of salt and jet fuel across the naval pier. Families stood behind the white rope line, cameras ready, eyes searching the horizon where the gray silhouette of the USS Hartford was easing back into port after a long deployment. Banners fluttered, "Welcome home, SEAL Team 12, painted by wives, children, and a few old veterans who still remembered what it was like to stand and wait. Among them stood a woman in a plain denim jacket and faded jeans, her auburn hair tucked behind her ears, sunglasses hiding eyes that had not slept much the night before. She didn't hold a sign, she didn't wave a flag, she just stood there, silent, composed, watching as the ship drew closer. Her name was Elena Ward. She hadn't come here for anyone on the manifest, at least not officially. To everyone else, she was just another face in the crowd. But when the first figures appeared on deck, the familiar silhouettes of SEALs in their blue coveralls, waving back at their families, her breath caught. Her right hand instinctively touched her left wrist, where a thin band of ink peeked out from under her sleeve. A tattoo, small, almost hidden, a pair of wings crossed by a trident. Only a handful of people in the world knew what that symbol meant. The crowd erupted in cheers as the ramp dropped. Kids rushed forward with handmade posters, wives sobbed and clung to their husbands, and the base photographer clicked furiously. Elena stayed back, near the end of the pier, where the noise dulled and the smell of diesel hung heavier. Then she saw him. Commander Jack Rains, tall, broad-shouldered, his hair more silver than it used to be, stepping off the ramp last, scanning the crowd with the sharp, controlled gaze of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading faces before acting. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. He stopped walking. The noise of the crowd seemed to fade. Elena didn't move, neither did he. It had been 12 years. 12 years since that night in Kandahar. 12 years since she'd last heard his voice crack through a radio. "Eagle 2, we're hit. I repeat, we're..." And then static. 12 years since her brother's helicopter never came home. And now, standing 20 feet away, the man who had commanded that mission, the man who had lived when others hadn't, was staring at her tattoo like he'd seen a ghost. Rains took a slow step forward, then another. The sailors around him moved aside, giving him a wide berth without realizing why. His expression was unreadable, part disbelief, part guilt, part something harder to name. "Elena," he said finally, his voice barely audible over the wind. She didn't answer. Her throat felt tight. She hadn't planned to talk to him. She'd told herself she'd just come to watch the ship dock, to prove she could. Closure, that's what her therapist had called it. Just closure. But now, face to face, that plan disintegrated. Rain stopped a few feet away. "I thought," he hesitated, his hands flexing at his sides, "I thought you moved to Colorado after..." "I did." Her voice was calm, too calm. "I came back." He nodded slowly. "For this?" "I read the deployment list." His eyes flickered. "You came just to watch?" She almost smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Something like that. The chatter of the crowd filled the silence between them, but to Elena it all seemed far away. Her focus was locked on Rains, the man who had led her brother's last mission, who had lived with the decision to leave him behind. She'd replayed that day 1,000 times, in the dark, in the quiet, every time she saw his picture in her wallet. Her brother, Lieutenant Mark Ward, had been the youngest pilot in his squadron. Funny, fearless, reckless in the way only 20-somethings who think they're immortal can be. And Rains had been his commanding officer, the one who'd given the order to abort extraction after the bird was hit. The Navy had called it unrecoverable circumstances. Elena had called it betrayal. Rains broke the silence first. "You kept the tattoo," he said softly, eyes flicking to her wrist. She glanced down at it. "Mark drew it himself, said it was going to be our family emblem, the day before he shipped out." Rains's jaw tightened. "I remember. He showed it to me in the hangar, said he'd talk you into getting one if we made it back." Her gaze snapped to his, but he didn't make it back. The words hung in the air like shrapnel. He took it, didn't flinch, didn't defend himself, just let the silence sit there, heavy and unmovable. Finally, he said, "You're right." The simplicity of it stunned her. She'd expected excuses, the kind of bureaucratic deflections she'd read in reports. Instead, he looked her in the eye and said it again, quieter this time. "You're right, he didn't, and I've never stopped seeing that day every time I close my eyes." For the first time she saw it, the wear in his face, the shadows under his eyes. He didn't look like a man who had forgotten. Still, the anger she'd carried for years flared. "You had a chance to go back for them," she said. "You didn't." He met her gaze, unblinking. "We tried. We were 2 clicks out when the second mortar hit. The bird that went down burned for hours. We couldn't." His voice broke. He swallowed hard. "We couldn't get close." Elena shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "There were ways. You could have fought harder." "You think I didn't?" The edge in his voice cut through the air. Not defensive, just raw. "You think I wanted to leave him there? I sent my best man, my best friend, into that fire trying to pull your brother out. He came back with 3rd-degree burns and half his hearing gone." He took a shaky breath. "We didn't stop because we wanted to. We stopped because we had nothing left to give." The words hit harder than she expected. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind picked up, fluttering the flags overhead. Elena looked away toward the sea. The waves rolled slow and dark against the hull. Rains followed her gaze. "He saved 3 of my men that night," he said quietly. "Dragged them out before the explosion. He didn't make it because he went back for a 4th. Her lips trembled. "They never told me that." "They should have." He hesitated. "He was the kind of man you'd follow into hell, and we did. I owe him more than I can ever repay." A child's laughter rang nearby, a little boy wrapped in his father's arms, waving a small flag. The sound twisted something in Elena's chest. Rains noticed her glance. "You have kids?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "No, just me." He nodded slowly. "I never had any either. Guess the Navy took that chance." For a moment they stood like that. 2 lives shaped and scarred by the same loss, neither knowing what forgiveness should look like. Then Rains reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a silver coin, worn smooth with age. He held it out to her. "I was going to bring this to Arlington next week," he said. "I had it made after that mission." Elena hesitated, then took it. The coin was engraved with an eagle and trident, the seal insignia, but on the back, in small etched letters, were 4 names. Her brother's was the first. Her throat tightened. "You carry this with you?" "Every day," he said. "I rub it when I need to remember why I'm still doing this." She blinked hard. "And what are you doing now?" "Training recruits, teaching them how not to repeat my mistakes." He gave a faint, humorless smile. Not exactly the glorious part of the job. The wind shifted again, carrying the low hum of engines powering down. The ceremony was ending. Sailors were heading toward the gates, families laughing and crying. Elena turned the coin in her palm, feeling the weight of the names. "I came here thinking I'd hate you," she said. "I told myself I just wanted to see the man who gave that order, to prove you were still human enough to feel something." Rains's voice was quiet, and now, she looked up at him, eyes glassy. "Now I see you already have." He nodded once slowly. They stood in silence for a long time, the kind that says everything words can't. Then she closed her fingers around the coin and handed it back. "Keep it," she whispered. "It's done enough traveling." He looked down at her hand, then back at her face. "You sure?" She smiled faintly. "You earned it more than I did." Rains studied her for a moment, then slipped the coin back into his pocket. "I never got to tell you," he said quietly. "Your brother's last words. I didn't include them in the report." Elena's breath hitched. "What did he say?" He said, "Tell her I did it my way." Then he laughed. Even with smoke and fire all around, he laughed. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "That sounds like him," she whispered. "Yeah," Rains said softly. "That's what keeps me going." The crowd had thinned now. The pier was almost empty. Only the gulls and the distant creak of ropes remained. Elena wiped her eyes, embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to fall apart in front of you." He shook his head. "You're not falling apart. You're just remembering." She gave a watery laugh. "Feels like the same thing." "Sometimes it is," he said, "but that's how you heal." She nodded slowly, then looked out at the sea one last time. "When I saw the ship coming in," she said, "I thought maybe I'd feel proud again. Instead, all I felt was empty. But now—" She turned to him. "Now I think I can finally breathe." Rains looked at her for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Thank you for coming, Elena." She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, steady, the kind that carried both apology and respect. "Mark would have been proud," he said. Her lips trembled into a smile. "Of you too, I think." He smiled back, the first real one she'd seen from him. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Maybe not, but it's enough to know he mattered." She nodded. He did. They stood like that for a few seconds, two veterans of different kinds of wars. Then she stepped back. "Goodbye, Commander." He gave a small nod. "Fair winds, Elena." As she walked away, the sun dipped low over the bay, casting the ship in gold. Her steps were slow, deliberate, lighter than when she'd arrived. She didn't look back, not right away. But when she reached the end of the pier, something made her stop. She turned. Rains was still there, watching her. He lifted his hand in a quiet salute, not the stiff, formal kind, but the kind that said thank you, and I'm sorry, and I remember. She hesitated, then lifted her own hand, two fingers brushing the edge of her brow. A silent understanding passed between them, carried on the wind. Then she turned again and kept walking. That night, back in her small apartment overlooking the harbor, Elena placed a photo on her windowsill. One of her and Mark in their old backyard, sunlight in their hair, the faint outline of the tattoo barely visible on his wrist. She touched the glass and whispered, "He remembers you, Mark. They all do." Outside, the lights of the base glimmered across the water. She watched them for a long time, until the ache in her chest softened into something almost peaceful. And for the first time in 12 years, she slept without nightmares.